Star of the West by Laura Alexander. Vroom! The car went as we started our car to make the trip to explore South Dakota. In the passenger seat, I lay my seat back to get cozy as we begin our 5-hour drive. The ground surrounding us was flat with empty gray and green colors. As we traveled through the state, our sight began to change. I looked out the window and began to notice a few hills starting to rise up from the ground. These hills travel for miles and get bigger as our drive gets longer. The first adventure on our agenda is the Black Hills National Forest. I can tell we're getting closer as the green ground turns to black mountains. As we are submerged in the forest, nature calls us to a hike and traverse to the river to catch some dinner. Day 1 of our long weekend began with an enormous breakfast at a small country cupboard and an off-roading trip to a beautiful lookout found by our local waiter. As we gained a view of the area from a high peak, we decided our next move would to see Mount Rushmore to be encompassed with our country's history. The view of Mount Rushmore was nothing like I've ever seen before. It was amazing that someone carved out 4 faces out of a mountain. It was truly an honor to see one of the most famous national memorials. Next on our agenda was Custer State Park. We purchased our parking pass and took every hairpin turn as slow as the car in front of us, being careful not to slide off the cliff. We were surrounded by beauty like I've never seen before. Our scenic route went from tree-filled mountains to stall-toned rocks to prairie lands. This park was filled with a variety of nature. As we took our final turn, we were stopped. In a matter of seconds, our car was surrounded by buffalo. All we could say was, "Oh my goodness." That night, we spent the night on the town in the city of Deadwood, famous for its historical western streets. On this day, we drove around to see the surrounding areas and states. Our first stop was in Wyoming to see another famous landmark, Devil's Tower. It was huge! After Wyoming, we drove to Montana, just for the fun of it. We didn't see much, but crossing off that state was worth it. Our last stop in the Black Hills was a beautiful waterfall. At 60 feet, Bridal Veil Falls was so pure. Our last and final stop of the trip was the Badlands National Park. This was my favorite part because it was like a concave desert. The air was hot and the wind was blowing. We ended our trip by camping out underneath the stars. It was remarkably dazzling. We packed up our tent along with all of our belongings and said goodbye to the Star of the West. The end.